All right, I'll go ahead and get us started on the program this afternoon. Thank you all for being here, and for many of you had the chance to try the Insights Discovery online survey, which you'll still be able to do after our program today. The topic that I'm going to be speaking on is roughly insights into delivering difficult information, and we're going to address the delivery of difficult information from the perspective of, take the Stephen Covey quote, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood." So the tool that we're looking at gives us an opportunity to better understand ourselves. Then once we know a little more about ourselves and how others might perceive us, we can begin to say, okay, here are the steps I would like to take when I need to communicate things that are uncomfortable. And that can be anything from, hey, I need to tell my neighbor to get their cones out of my parking place because I shoveled it, to doing performance reviews in the workplace, anything that comes out as difficult information. So we'll begin with that. This particular tool, Insights Discovery, is based in the psychology of Carl Jung, psychologist at the turn of the last century, early 1900s. And many behavioral personality type indicators are based in Jung. How many are familiar with Myers-Briggs? Okay, DISC, anyone seen DISC? All right, so a lot of familiarity with this tool. I've used DISC in my professional practice. I'm certified in Myers-Briggs. I've been working with Insights Discovery since 2005, and I've found it is the most effective of the personality type indicators because everything is done in terms of color energy, so it's just a little bit easier to remember. I've had people who knew me in 2006 contact me 7 years later to say, hey, remember that color energy stuff? I'd love for you to come do that in the company I'm in now. So it really sticks and they remember it. So let's launch into what this is and how it works. How many of you have heard the expression, that's just the tip of the iceberg? So what does it mean?
There's a lot underneath.
Yeah, there's a lot underneath.
You see a little part of
Yeah.
what's really there.
Right, right. What we can see is just a tiny fraction of what is actually present. So here in our environment, all we can see of one another is our behavior. We're watching one another behave in the workplace, in the family, in the community. We can see each other's behavior, but underneath that behavior are our beliefs and values, indeed our intuitive selves. So one of the things we'll be looking at is, what does my behavior tell you about my intuitive self, and what's going to be the best way for you to make a connection with me based on understanding my intuitive self by watching my behavior. So we all bring our own perspectives to looking at problems, to solving things. I'm going to invite you all to bring your perspectives to this picture. All right? Tell me, how many faces do you see? 5, 6. Anyone see more than 6?
No, I see 5.
5, okay.
Obvious one.
Yeah, there's an obvious one.
Dog doesn't count, does it?
Ah, good question. He said the dog doesn't count, does it?
I counted the dog.
You counted the dog.
I counted the dog.
All right, so now we're at a point where we need to come to some agreement here. Are we counting dogs? Yes? Everyone? Okay.
Oh, so what about the bird? I hadn't.
Ah, there's birds there as well. Are we counting all animals?
Are we looking at
I
the big
did.
picture or
I
the small
counted.
picture?
Are we looking at the big picture or the small picture, right? So we're all bringing different perspectives to looking at the same thing. Some are counting dogs, some are counting birds. So let us say, for the sake of working together, if it's okay with everyone, we will count all animals. All right? So counting faces, do another count and tell me who sees more than 6. Mike, you see more than 6? Anyone else see more than 6?
I would say 9 because there's the bird on the
Okay.
stone post there.
Mhm.
But actually 10 because right above that face to the left of that bird, underneath it, there's 2 very small birds in the background where you can't see the face. You can assume that they have a face.
Uh-huh. Yep, we can assume, right. If you think it's a bird, then you can think it has a face. So that takes you to 9?
Yeah, I think so. You do another check.
All right. Does anyone?
10.
10? All right. Anyone see more than 10? So Jonathan, would you mind take a walk up to the screen and just point to each face that you see?
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll count them. Thank you.
Here's the overall profile of this older gentleman who's bald.
Mhm.
You have the senorita right here who's holding a baby. You see this older gentleman right here?
So what is that now, 4?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Then here's 5, profile.
Mm-hmm.
6, frontal face.
Okay.
Oh, well, I just saw one. There's 7. So
Okay.
I'm gonna go to 11. Okay. There's the dog, the bird, in the more of the foreground or middle ground, and in the background, these 2 birds right here. You know, and I'm straining to see if there's something hidden in the walls or the background of the sky or the pebbles here.
Yeah.
If there's something there, I don't see it. But that's all I've seen.
All right. Does anyone else see anything that Jonathan hasn't pointed out? Looks like there could be a profile right here looking that way. Another profile looking at me where that bird is actually an eye.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh,
So as we spend more time with the tip of the iceberg, at first we said, oh, there's 5 or 6 faces. Now we're up to 12 or 13, and depending on how long and how deeply you want to connect the dots, there's more and more things to see. Going to show that what we immediately see is not really necessarily everything that's there. We need to do that deeper dive. So I'm going to invite each of you to take one of these stacks of cards. What you're getting is 12 cards, and this is to introduce you to the idea of color energy as representative of your own personality style. You have in front of you 12 cards, and on them are written various things. You're going to go through these cards and read them over. The cards that are very good descriptors of your behavior, of your beliefs, of the way you like to interact, put in front of you and keep them. This describes me, I'm keeping it. The ones that do not describe you, you're going to put in a discard pile. Then you'll take your discard pile, walk around the room a little bit and see if you can trade cards with somebody to get rid of your discards. Perhaps one of the personality traits that you do not have is actually one that someone else has. So let's start seeing where our similarities and differences are, just in terms of these cards, and then after this we'll talk a little bit more about the colors. When the exercise is over, you should still have 12 cards, but they don't have to be 3 of each color. They can be 12 cards, whatever works best for you. Any questions about the exercise?
Do we all have the same card?
Nope.
Oh, that's interesting.
If you're on the fence about one,
Hang on to it, and then if you see you want to trade it, you can trade it. Okay. So take your discards and go around and meet some colleagues and just do this on foot, stand up table by table. And try to do a direct trade if you can. Now, Jim, you know, you have to let Carl decide if that's his choice. Yeah.
You have to trade color for color.
Nope, not color for color, just card for card. So go around and trade cards with people, and
Oh, have you got cards too?
I'm doing it too.
How exciting. And those are your,
These are the cards I'm keeping, but I have these to
I bet you're a
trade.
change agent.
I can be, yes. Are any of these you?
I think I'm quietly productive.
Okay, I will take that, and I like that. I'm going to put it here now.
I take it you can have one of mine, so it's
I do. Do you do one of these?
okay.
So you don't have to take one of those things, it's just not mandatory.
There seem to be a lot of cards
All
that
right.
match me well.
Yes.
Just take those off your hands, sir.
So try to be one-on-one even
I was
exchanges.
just going through it again.
And wander around. I still have 2 more to get rid of.
Yeah.
Can I trade in my whole hand?
Well, if you run out of people to change with, I do have a I have a well here, and you can go to the well and draw cards until you have 12 that reflect you.
I had one, I put it in.
Depends on what it is.
Right, your discards you're going to trade with other people.
Simple music. Get one for you for the one I gave you. Yeah, take it because.
Oh, I put mine in.
So is there a limit how many cards you're supposed to have?
From
No, I didn't.
I still have one. We met.
Yeah.
Is there like
I put it here.
a ceiling how many cards you should have?
You should have 12.
Okay.
In the end, you need 12 cards, doesn't matter the colors of the cards.
So I need to get rid of some.
If you've got more than 12, you need to get rid of some. Okay. Take the ones from your discard, the ones that do not describe you. Those are the ones you're getting rid of.
Yeah, right.
All right.
I think
You're right. I did take it.
I'm guessing you set precise goal-oriented objectives. Do you have some to give away, or are you?
No, I'm.
you have 12?
Setting my ways, yeah.
All right, you're 12, you're done. Okay.
Sees decision-making as a challenge. Would anyone like that one?
Sees decision-making as a challenge.
Be quick, decide, and negative.
I'm indecisive about
What are you looking to give away?
that.
Natural go-getter?
Excuse me, Maura.
Yeah.
I would take that one. Can you take one of these?
Oh, no, I pick.
No.
Okay, all right.
That's precise. Yeah, no, that's not a strength of mine at all.
Okay, all right.
I try hard.
But any of these.
By the way, first thing I want to say is, I love the print of that dress.
Oh,
My wife is Chinese, and that's
Excuse
like
me.
porcelain.
Yeah. Like these.
Yeah.
So I've got,
So I've come up against 2 from my discard pile that I just can't give away, can't trade them with anybody. So now I'm going to go to the well here in this bowl because I need to end up with a total of 12 cards. So if you've met with everyone you can meet with and still can't find a home,
I just realized this says can, where I thought it said can't.
all right, you need to do a trade? Can go with the flow. Well, I can do that. Can you do one of these?
Yeah, 12, sir.
I do. Not really.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go to the well.
Who does not have 12 cards and like to see what I have?
That's what I've got.
I have 12, but I could do some trading.
These are my 3 giveaways. Good at undertaking routine tasks, competitive wants to win at all costs, and master technical subjects.
I think I can go with this one.
Okay, so if I
Is it
have.
1 for 1 in this?
Yes. 1 for 1 on your trade-ins. You need to end up with 12 cards.
If I have 13, I.
You need to get rid of one. Yep, you can toss one in the bucket.
Is that you?
And then can I swap out from?
Yep, you can swap out from there if you've got some that don't fit you. You can, if you haven't met someone who you could swap with.
So now let me see one of yours you'd like to give up.
Well, I ran out of ones to give up.
All right, so if everyone is getting close to 12, you can come back to your seat. And
I don't need any, but I got 1 to give away.
All right, you can just throw it in the bucket if you want to. Yep. Just so you end up with 12. Now, when you have your 12, organize them by color. Okay, so see my 12 are organized by color? Do I have 12? 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I do. I'm organizing them by color. And then I'm going to lay them in front of me on the desk with the color I have the most of the farthest away from me. So I'm going to make an inverted pyramid on the space in front of me. And we'll just be creative about how we do this with our plates. Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh, look at that, Kim. You came out 3, 3, and 3. I mean, same thing. Huh. And some of us with very strong preferences, others of us, interesting. So we all have different ways of behaving, different things that describe us as detailed in these color energy cards. So I'm going to go color by color through the energies, and we'll talk about what each one means. So cool blue. Cool blue color energy shows no bias, is objective, detached, and analytical. All right, that's the first overview of cool blue. Fiery red energy, positive, affirmative, bold, and assertive. And we start to see differences. The cool blue, more laid back, more behind the scenes, organizing, gathering details. The fiery red, more out in front, giving orders, making sure things get done. Sunshine yellow is the cheerful, uplifting, spirited, buoyant, very much more extroverted, more likely to be the one speaking, to be bringing everyone together. Earth green, tranquil, calming, soothing, earth green. This is the person that wants a democratic process, wants there to be harmony, seeks consensus at all times, whenever possible. And as you look around at what each of us has as a preferred color energy, at least from this short exercise, you start to see some differences. One of the exercises I do with large teams, we think of words that come to mind that resonate with the term fiery red, with the term sunshine yellow, with cool blue, with earth green. And always the words that come to mind are consistent with the behavioral types that are shown here. All right? So this is a good day. All of us have good days, and so we can all know that if our largest first choice color energy is one of these, that this is probably how we are perceived on a good day, when we're behaving at our best. When we dive into your individual profiles, I'll give you more information about this. So this is the upside, good day, how we're perceived. However, my bad day slide is not appearing. I will get that for you later. All right, if each color energy had a motto, that cool blue would say, let's do it right. At all costs, they are seeking accuracy. So they're asking good, detailed questions because they want to get things right. Fiery red wants to get things started. Sunshine yellow wants to do things together. Earth green values harmony above all. So I am going to invite you now, regardless of your eating status, to stand next to the hat that reflects the card you have the most of, or if you have equal numbers of each card, the color which, after this brief introduction, is resonating the most strongly for you. So we'll have some people by the yellow hat, some by the green, some by the blue, and some by the red.
Well, I happen to know where it was, so I didn't have to cheat a little bit up trying.
So now that you're all gathered, okay, so we have Kim and Richard and Carl with the sunshine yellow, Mary and Valerie, thank you, earth green, cool blue. All right, we have Jonathan and Jim, and fiery red, we have Mike and David. Okay, interesting mix, and I found my bad day slide. So can I invite everybody to turn around? So, a little accusatory here.
Stuffy.
On a good day, we're at,
None of those words describe.
on a bad day, that's not you?
No, Jim, I think.
Oh, none of those describe Jim? Well, we'll talk about
Reserved.
first and second color choice energies. I think Jim is very much on the line between blue and red, but we'll talk about that when we do the profiles. All right, so these are the bad day pieces where Jim maybe has been trying to get things right and seeking details and asking questions. His questions are now seen as suspicious, cold, and reserved. These are the bad day things. Maybe you just don't see Jim on that many bad days. But, interesting measure, when you're trying to suss out colleagues, where they might come from in terms of their behavioral preferences, the bad day list is actually the quickest way to figure it out. When they're at their worst, how are they? And then you may know which color energy they lead with. Although we're going to be talking a lot about the positive aspects of all the color energies, if I'm trying to think of a colleague, think, oh yeah, Yeah, he can be a little stuffy and reserved. Yeah, oh, I guess that is cool blue. Because we're thinking of Jim as so outgoing and welcoming that we're assuming sunshine yellow. And yet, in his heart of hearts, his key preference is for cool blue. So fiery red, that was hard charging, bringing everyone together, we can do it, I love a challenge, don't tell me it can't be done, it can be, is suddenly aggressive, controlling, driving, overbearing, and intolerant. Right? A little bit problematical. But again, we all have our bad days. Sunshine yellow,
A question.
yes,
I'm looking at my wife's,
yes.
and I just wonder if someone who has one red card
Okay?
would tend to perceive me, I have 2 red cards, as aggressive, controlling, overbearing, intolerant.
I don't think we should put her on the spot publicly.
Thank you very much.
One of the things we're going to talk about is with earth green and cool blue,
Yeah.
we do not put them on the spot publicly. Fiery red and sunshine yellow are a little more gregarious and outgoing and can take the being put on the spot. You'll notice that red and green are opposite colors and blue and yellow are opposite colors. So yeah, we'll get into what the colors most seek and most fear, and we'll get there in a few slides. So you may be seen that way. All of
I'm
us.
thinking a lot of my clients are reds,
Okay.
and I don't think they perceive an ounce of red in me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Mary might
We'll be
perceive
talking
quite a lot
about
of red in me.
the less conscious persona. That may be the case, yeah. So the downside of the fiery red persona is this, suddenly they're just too over the top, pushing too hard, not listening. It suddenly becomes a problem. Over here, Earth Green, who was being so helpful, I will do anything for you, this is going to be, great, let's make sure everyone has been heard, let's be discreet, let's be careful, has suddenly become completely docile. Whatever you want, fine, we'll just do it your way. They stop giving opinions, they become stubborn, they just dig in, they're not going to move. When before, they were the most cooperative, helping out. If we lose them and their bad day happens, this is where they're going to be. Sunshine Yellow, who was all happy and bringing people together, cheering people on, just being exuberant presenters, is now Chicken Little, the sky is falling, running around, giving out too much information, little indiscreet, very flamboyant when they're stressed. So all of us need to recognize both of these things about us, because what we see are sometimes the downside pieces. So I'm going to invite you to stay where you are and we'll talk to the various colors. So if there were a colorful statement for cool blue, it's let's do it right. Does that seem consistent for you too? That just the more data you can have, the more correct you can be, the more confident you're going to feel. And you might rather dig for data than stop and make a presentation, because you might be ready with the presentation, but if there's 6 more pieces of data that maybe could go into it, you might want to do that. Perhaps. I'm being overly generalizing.
For me, it's not always data, but yeah, I think let's do it right. Fits me very right.
Driving more so than the others. For this group, let's do it now. The data's here. We know enough. Let's get it started. Let's move. Okay? Does that seem consistent
Right.
as a motto? Right now. Okay.
Sure.
Come up.
Let's do it together. At all costs, let us bring people together so that we know everyone in the loop. This is the one color energy that actually prefers to be copied on everyone's emails, just so we know what's going on. Right? Is that just... Yeah, it bugs you when you're not. Yeah. Okay.
You have to know what's going on.
Right?
I may not read them all, but
Okay. Yeah, but you at least have a sense of what's going on. Do it harmoniously. Whatever we're doing, let there be harmony. Let there not be conflict. All right? Does that seem consistent for the two of you, leading with Earth Green? All right. All of us have different color preferences that we leave with. I'm going to do a quick preference check-in. I see a lot of you have folded arms. Would everybody fold their arms, please? Everybody fold your arms. Okay, this is our preference. This is the way we fold our arms. Take your bottom arm. Oh, and do you feel comfortable with your folding arms? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Take your bottom arm, make it your top arm. How does that feel? Weird, uncomfortable. It's different. It's a preference. But can you do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. Same thing with the color energies. Our preference is to lead from one of these 4 places. However, We can all lead from any of these places. It's just a little awkward sometimes because it's not our preference. So that's how we do the dive into these. So I'm going to take turns putting each color on the spot, and then we'll move into some other activities. So cool blue. Individuals with a preference for cool blue, detached and objective, want to know and understand the world around them. They value independence and intellect, like to think things through before committing, want information to be accurate and complete before proceeding. I'm seeing some head nods, okay? Fire.
Could I just say my experience in kicking the meeting off?
Yeah.
It's not in my real comfort zone to talk to groups, especially unrehearsed, unplanned. But when Kimberly asked me to do it, I felt, some yellow. So
Mm-hmm.
I felt, gosh, these are friends, and I'm glad to be here, and I certainly
Right.
think about this a lot, and I pretty much know what I want to say.
Yeah.
But I had an extra minute, so I wrote down.
Interesting.
the
What a
things I
great
wanted
example.
to say
Yeah.
Because of the blue,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
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 I
That's a-
never would have, never would have thought that.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. So individuals with the fiery red preference, active, move in a positive and firm direction. This group is always striding forward, knowing where it's going. They have a strong determination, influences everyone. When fiery red is moving forward on a cause, we all want to join in. Just the absolute confidence that radiates makes it feel like we can accomplish it. Even if maybe we can't, but that's a story for another time. Single-minded and determined on their focus, direct and straightforward. This group does not do a lot of small talk unless they've trained themselves to do it. Otherwise, it's here I am, here's what I need, let's go. And seek an outcome specific and tangible. How do you two feel? Is this relatively
Very much so.
comfortable? Okay. Very direct. With the preference for sunshine yellow, radiate enthusiasm and encourage participation. Enjoy and seek the company of others, approach others in a persuasive, engaging, and inviting, want to be involved, like to be noticed and appreciated. Hey, say thank you. Okay? Does that seem consistent with your general approach? And sometimes when we get into our individual charts and graphs from your profile, where you're standing right now may not be exactly where your charts and graphs put you, so you'll get a chance to change corners after a little bit. With the earth green preference, view the world through what they value and what is important to them. Above all is values. Seek harmony and depth. Defend what they value with quiet determination, persistence. Prefer democratic approaches that respect the individual and ensure all perspectives are heard or considered when making decisions. So can you see where this measured, consistent, conflict-avoiding approach could be very much the opposite of the fiery red, boom, let's do it. Does this seem consistent with the way both of you approach your interactions?
Yeah, I think so.
You think? Yeah. That very much discretion. Let's do this discreetly. I was doing this seminar a week ago for a group of human resources professionals from a listserv. The 20 people that were coming to the meeting, I put all their emails into the to box and said, here's what we're going to do. The leader of the listserv, who leads with Earth Green Energy, called me immediately and said, Maura, we protect our email addresses. They do not go public, and you just sent it out to the whole list. I said, and I remembered the green energy because my first inclination, and we'll come to this with delivering difficult information, I wanted to defend myself. So, I only sent it to 20 people, and there are 20 people who are going to be at the meeting and meet one another and maybe give each other their email addresses. But I remembered her values. And I just said, Jean, I apologize. You're absolutely right. I should have used the BCC function. Now, I knew she was worried that I had actually sent that to all 600 people on her listserv, and she was wondering, how did I get all 600 emails? I said, if you don't mind doing a deeper dive into it, you'll see that there are only 20 people copied. So while I have violated confidentiality, I have only violated it for 20 people. Let me send you the apology email that I'm going to send around to the group, and you can tweak it and adjust it before we go. So just an idea of the consistency of the values and how very important that was. And same sort of interactions happen for each of the color energies. So I talked about our wants and our fears as we're planning. So if I have to give difficult information to someone who I've recognized has a preference for a certain color energy, I want to keep these things in mind. If I'm dealing with someone who's leading with cool blue, I have to remember they want to get it right and they fear embarrassment. So my husband leads with cool blue and I lead with sunshine yellow. And that can be a problem, as you can imagine, because on my bad days, what am I? I'm hasty and flamboyant, giving away all of his personal secrets, and he can become embarrassed. So we have to work these things out. I have to really respect that. Do not embarrass cool blue energy, because then you end up with that shutdown piece. Fiery red loves a challenge. If there's a way I can put my request to my fiery red colleagues, as in, I need your help with this, I'm stumped, can you help? They love that challenge, unless it's super easy, and they don't want to fail. So really, the fear is failure. It doesn't mean that they'll fall apart if they fail, but let's remember that as we interact, that their concern is they don't want to fail. Earth green, I'm remembering that they're seeking harmony and fearing conflict. So if I need to find a way, and it doesn't mean that you won't do conflict, right? You can, but you probably want some time to think about it and plan for how you're going to approach it when conflict is coming. Sunshine yellow seeks recognition. And I don't mean applause and giving you stuff all the time, but notice that we're in the room. Look up and smile, say hello when we walk by. One of the cool blue sunshine yellow problems is, now Jim has a nice smile on his face. Jonathan looks more reserved at the moment. There's a smile. Sometimes sunshine yellow, not seeing a smile, thinks, oh my goodness, they hate me, because we fear being left out or feeling unloved. We leap to conclusions that are not correct, but are nevertheless, we need to be aware of that we have those conclusions about one another. So that is a lightning fast overview of the color energies. What questions or comments do you have? And then I'll move you into how to read your individual graphs and charts, and then we'll do a little more about delivering difficult information within this context. So questions or comments? Yes.
So I, as a green, I often actually feel like I get along with reds the best. Is that common to
Interesting.
enjoy
Why is that?
time with? I think being the mellow, harmonious, I like the
Yes.
strong personality. In some ways because it brings out the strong personality in me, which is
Ah.
not something I necessarily, again, see as a strength or bring out myself, but I
Right.
enjoy being,
Yes.
Yeah.
You like the fact that the hard-charging fiery red allows you to really work on bringing out harmony and making sure all are heard. Interesting. Yeah, that, it can be, a lot of times, I say I'm married to someone with cool blue. A lot of partnerships are great when you're opposites because you have both aspects of differing personality types. So, yeah,
I see
good
that's
observation.
Might tend to be a yellow. I have learned to be bluish because my wife is definitely red, and I'm the one, I make the company happen. I make the relationships work. I
Right.
manage. My wife is wonderful and sometimes aggressive.
Okay.
And I tend to manage people to how to work with my wife and to see
Ah,
where she's coming from.
Yeah.
So I kind of get that blue, this kind of, so I can see where it's around, but we often say, if I'm not there, company doesn't make it. If if Annie's not there, company doesn't make it, because there's the opposite parts that
Yes.
were very important keys.
Yeah, that both bring in.
Rebalance.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're using some blue,
Definitely.
step back and be analytical, as well as some yellow, so that people aren't completely put off by her very hard charging style,
Right.
and yet people love it that she's hard charging, because that's what keeps your company moving.
She comes in and lights up the office.
Yeah,
But
yep.
it can be intense sometimes.
Right.
We want this thing done and that thing done.
Yes.
And,
Yeah. Excellent observations.
So I have a comment, which is I feel like I relate to the togetherness of the sunshine,
Mm-hmm.
which to me is connected with harmony.
Okay.
If you want the harmony, you
Yeah.
want togetherness.
Yep.
But I hear the yellow and I think of that as extroverted.
Yes.
And that is not my style.
Right.
At all.
Right.
So there's something in that sunshine that I do see in myself,
Yes.
but another thing that absolutely don't.
Right? As we look at the color circle, we'll see that the red and the yellow are the more extroverted preferences. So these are the groups, the yellow and the red. Extroversion gains their energy from interactions with people. That's how they get fired up. On the introverted side, blue and green gains their energy from quiet reflection. While we may have goals in common, it's how we gain our energy that defines us for introversion or extroversion. With larger groups in bigger spaces, I have people walk right, walk left, and we see how close we are, because some people are right on the line between introversion and extroversion, and some are like so far, they're like by the elevators from an introverted standpoint, at how far they are, and others from an extroverted standpoint are someplace over the Charles. It just varies. So the introversion and extroversion divides. And then, and we'll cover this in a little bit, at the top of the circle and the bottom of the circle, blue and red are more about the thinking function, which is fact-based, analytical, and yellow and green are more about the feeling function. And yeah, you can return to your seats for those who are tired of standing. And we'll talk more about the mix of extroversion, introversion, thinking, and feeling when we're done looking at everyone's individual profiles. So any other questions or comments before we move on to the individual profiles?
By the way, if
Yes.
you print that out, can you reach it on the internet? Can you see it without printing it?
I sent it to you as a PDF this morning.
Oh.
Yeah, so if you look for, yours was only processed this morning, so if you look for an email from me, there will be a PDF attached to it that you can open.
Do you know which email?
That I sent it to? The one that was in whatever you entered on the profile when you took it.
Okay.
Or whatever you used to register for this seminar, or whatever you and I have previously emailed about. When yeah. And I can try to send it to you again if I've missed you. So if you would all open to the second to the last page of your Insights Discovery profile, or be looking at that on a device. We'll go from there. Yes, no problem.
To ASC, CARL.
I will do that. So if everyone would come to those graphs and charts on that second to the last page, and I'm going to go through these slides, and then we'll take a quick break and I'll email that to you. But this will tell you how to read the charts when you get them. For those who haven't done a profile previously, you are welcome to do one after the session. If you're registered for the session, I did send you an email with a link to do this online. That's where you'll get this. So looking on the left-hand side, so these are, you'll have a left-hand side graph, which is the conscious persona, right-hand side graph, less conscious. Let's talk about, and the preference flow up the middle. We're going to start by talking about the conscious persona. This is the graph on the left-hand side. All right? This is how we behave when we know we're being watched. All right? So you'll notice that this shows someone holding a mask. The conscious persona is, if I am walking down the street alone and I'm all in my own head, I look up, coming towards me are 5 colleagues. Something changes in my demeanor as I see those colleagues. And the left-hand graph shows what I'm choosing. What face do I choose to present to those colleagues? That's the conscious persona. I'm aware that I'm being watched, therefore I'm behaving in this way. So you'll notice each bar chart has 4 color energies, and there's a midline. Any color energy that's above that midline is a comfortable preference. You know that arm fold preference? Okay? That's the first choice arm fold, very comfortable. Another preference we could do is I could have you sign your name with your dominant hand and then your non-dominant. So anything above that midline in the conscious persona is very comfortable for you. So for this example, what color energies is this person most comfortable with in the conscious persona?
Yellow.
Yeah. Anything else?
Almost green.
Almost green, yeah, but not quite above that midline. So just interesting that that's where it falls. That's her preference. In the conscious persona, she defaults to sunshine yellow. That's her comfortable place. That's how she manages all of her interactions. The less conscious persona, notice she's taken the mask down. Still a little bit of a mask on there. The less conscious persona, this is when I was walking down the street before I saw the colleagues. When I was my most natural self, I was just me. Or if you think of a photographer at a party taking pictures, candid shots, the photographer just snaps them. You don't even know that she's taking the picture. Then when the photographer says, okay, I'm taking a picture, we pose. We put on the conscious persona. But the less conscious persona is that candid photo, the me walking down the street. So in this case, in her less conscious persona, what is she comfortable with?
Yellow, green, and red.
Yeah, yellow, green, and red. So when she's more herself, she's actually, I don't mean more herself, when she's in her less conscious persona, she's actually drawing on more color energies. The one up the middle tells us what we're drawing to go from less conscious to the more conscious persona. So in this case, at that middle graph, when this person moves from less conscious to conscious, she runs into her colleagues on the street, she draws up a lot of cool blue energy. She suppresses some green, brings up some yellow, suppresses some red. So it just says what is going on. These are great questions for self-reflection if you want to do this based on your profile. If there's something with a large spike close to that 50 percentile marking, wow, what's going on that is causing you to draw that much? And is that a joyful thing or a less joyful thing? Right, I have two examples from my own experience. When I took this graph when I was doing a biotech startup, it was myself and the company president. We had not hired the staff yet, and I was creating all of the policies and procedures that the company would be based upon. I was driving a giant spike of blue energy, which one would think, leading with sunshine yellow, would be stressful for me. But it wasn't, because I was driving blue in order to lay the foundation by which we would all work together. So it was fine with me. Another time, I took the profile, got this chart back. I was driving green, a lot of green. Above all, I was driving green. Now, my preferences stayed the same. My preferences with our yellow and red, actually, and that remained the same. But what I was driving was green. And at that moment, we were in layoff mode. And I was having to help people put resumes together, find other jobs. I'm in human resources, dealing with the grief and everything that goes with that. And being that nurturing was stressful for me. And I found myself barking at my family and outside of work, being a rather unpleasant person. I thought about it, I said, it is driving so much green that it's actually not one of my preferred color energies. What are things that I can do to step away from that? So just good questions to ask yourself about your own graphs. So before we move to the big circle chart, what questions, comments do you have about your own graphs?
I don't understand the middle graph.
Okay.
Can you go through that again?
Yep.
I got the other two.
All right, so when we're moving from less conscious on the far right, this was when walking down the street by myself,
Right.
my less conscious persona. When I see colleagues and therefore put on my mask,
Right.
what do I do to put on my mask? And in the case of this graph, I'm drawing on a lot of cool blue energy. So just spiking up. And these are yours. So when you're going from less conscious, you're suppressing a lot of your yellow, but driving a lot of your red. And then pushing some green and suppressing some blue. Those are your preferences for your less conscious and more conscious.
So why is that different than, I would think it would be like the opposite of this, or maybe it is.
Well, there is an opposite response in the graphs in that you recall the opposite colors. So the yellow here fills in the space left by the blue over here, where it's almost complete. The red here fills in the green here. The blue here fills in the yellow here. So they can be opposites. There's actually several slides goes deep into reading the profiles, and I'd be happy to follow up with you individually about your own. I did not include those in this presentation because it's pretty quick, but yeah. Did you have a question or comment as well?
So I want to see if I get this. You make an effort to form yourself into an appearance or a persona that you want to show publicly.
Yep.
And that what the middle chart is measuring is that effort that you're making.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
What are you doing to make the transition? What are you particularly driving?
Right.
And it varies at different times, although your preferences usually don't vary as much. Other questions about the graphs and charts? Yes, Richard?
You define conscious and unconscious. Thank you very much. Are you making any statements about which is preferable or which is right and which is wrong?
I'm quoting Carl Jung, who would tell us that both exist. There is our less conscious persona and our more conscious persona. For some of us, there's a large difference between the less conscious and the conscious. For others, there's very little difference. And we'll get into that with the next chart. So there isn't a better or a less better. There's just the reality that that's what they are. What is interesting, that for all I'm wearing my mask and putting on my conscious persona, remember when I said what we remember most about one another is our bad side? Chances are what you're going to see is my less conscious persona anyhow. So this kind of, because for all I'm trying to put that on, if you know me well, you can see the other pieces. So where you were asking, would your wife see the downside of fiery red, maybe that's your less conscious, and maybe she would see that because she knows you that well. So that could be.
So comment just to verify my understanding and a question. So it sounds like from the stories that you shared about the preference flow, your own personal stories, my the takeaway I get from those stories is that the preference flow is adaptive. So that different situations and contexts you may pull from different sources of energy. Depending on what's happening.
Exactly.
Transition from less conscious to more conscious. Well, that's really cool. Then the percentage underneath, the preference flow, what is that? Mine's a 41%. What does that mean?
Yeah, that is how much of a change is happening. And the larger the number that is, the larger the change from your conscious to less conscious, from your less conscious to conscious. Sorry about that.
So I do a bit of work when I switch.
Yeah, you are, yes. And look at your graphs. I can see that, you go from having 3 above the midline in the conscious to the less conscious, just 1 above the midline. So you're doing a lot of drawing to get from 1 above the midline to 3 above the midline.
My blue and my yellow go up pretty significantly above the line. I pull a little bit down my green and red. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but yours is saying, although we had you here in the cool blue corner, and that certainly is one of your comfortable colors, yours is saying your first choice in the less conscious would be green.
It's interesting because I have the same number of cards.
Yes. Yep, and that's consistent. The cards are consistent with your bar charts. They often are, sometimes they're not. So your cards, as they're laid out in front of you, are often very consistent with your conscious persona bar chart because you chose the way you think you behave. You were putting on your conscious persona when you drew these cards. So often, this will match your conscious persona graph. Not always. Go ahead, Mike.
I would suggest not seeing Mary's and not seeing Valerie's preference flow if they both had it, that more often than not, somebody that leads with the earth green like both of you do, it's very similar what you see in the less conscious and the more conscious. What you see is what you get.
When you're leading with earth green? Haven't seen Valerie's profile. Have seen Mary's. Yeah, she's pretty close, but a little, well, you can take a look at it. In the less conscious, she has a huge preference for green. In the conscious, she has a huge preference for green. Less conscious, she's more comfortable bringing up more, suppressing others. So, yeah, good observations.
I do notice that most people, too, if they have 2 dominant,
Yep.
they border each other, like it's not, you don't see red and green dominant.
Excellent observation. Yes, our color preferences are often neighbors on the color wheel, but not always. There are some people who would have a first choice blue with a second choice yellow, but that is pretty rare. Yes, usually our first and second are neighbors on the wheel. Okay. Ready to look at the circle graph? Just flip one over and you have a circle graph that looks like this. All right, so can everyone get their circle graph available to them? Somewhere on this graph, you have 1 or 2 dots. How many have just 1 dot on the graph? Okay, 2
What
dots?
does the dot look like? Is it
Looks like a
colorful?
pie
You have 1.
chart?
Yeah.
Show me the dot.
Yes. Yep, you've got 2.
Oh, the colorful circle.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Okay.
I've got 1.
Okay, you got 1. Some have 2. Where there's 1, and you have 2? I think more of us have 2. If you have 2, your conscious persona shows as the darker dots. Your less conscious persona shows as the more pastel dots. So that shows a difference between the conscious and the less conscious. If you have one, that's more of the WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And so there's one that doesn't change. So I know Mary does have two. The two dots are close together, but there's a noticeably different place where she is in the less conscious. So also where you are on the wheel is indicative of your preferences in color. That outer circle, that is one color energy above the midline. So a dot in the outer circle is one color energy above the midline. Classic types, we call this, the two color energies above the midline. Adapting types, three color energies above the midline. So that's just telling us where we stand. In some group exercises, we lay a mat on the floor and everyone physically stands. And we look at, if I'm standing with one color energy above the midline, I'm very easily adaptable to the colors on either side of me, but less so from the ones directly across. If I'm standing on three color energies above the midline, I'm a little bit closer to everyone on the circle. So it's just a matter of where we physically stand. There's not a best place to be. It's just an awareness of where we are. So I tried to put all of us whose profiles were ready at this time on this chart. And when I first put us together, we were 3 green and 3 blue of color energy preferences. We have since added, let's see, I believe, I get Carl on here at position number 27 in the sunshine yellow. So Carl, your dot would be right there. And Mike, do you happen to know your number?
44.
44. So Mike is going to be, where's that 44? Right there, with 3 color energies above the midline, and the first one is red. So if we were a team that was about to work together, what would you say about this team based on our color energies? What observations can you make?
Somebody needs to be in charge.
Okay. Does it have to be Mike with his fiery red in charge?
Not necessarily.
No, not necessarily at all. Because as we look at our bar charts, is anyone missing a color from their bar charts? No, we all have all 4 colors. It's just a matter of what our comfort level is. So even with Kim, you've got red as your last choice of color energy, and that's what this lines out. This is your 2 colors above the midline, there's your midline, and so this just says for each of us that's where our color energies fall, so we know a little about one another. All of us have red within us. Both Jim and Josh, who is not here but has a profile, have red as a comfortable above the midline color energy. So we would look at this team and say, yeah, we, at first glance, first inclination, probably someone needs to volunteer or step up to take the lead, or else fiery red will jump in and fill the vacuum, which is great, but leadership comes in all colors. I think if you think about world leaders and examples of colors, you see fiery red, you see cool blue, you see earth green, you see sunshine yellow. Think about examples of leaders in the world. Who do you see as someone who's cool blue? Think about political or public figures. Where do you think you see some cool blue energy, if you were to make a guess?
I'm thinking Obama right now.
Could be. He's coming from a very cool place with a lot of,
Tend to force and push.
that might be more fiery red.
No, I don't think he
Oh, he
does.
doesn't do that. Okay, so he's doing the cool blue.
I think so. He's more, if you hear him talk,
Mm-hmm.
you may not agree with him, but he usually sounds intelligent. He's thought about it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I find that instead of going down to the hill and just making people do stuff and putting them together and working
Mhm.
with them, he's more likely to be analytical, understand something, and then criticize them for not doing anything.
Okay. Could be cool blue. Okay. What else do you see in the way of leadership in terms of
Putin is a red.
who's that? Who is a red?
Putin.
Putin is a red. Yeah. This is
Black, you know.
this is what's happening. Okay. What about sunshine yellow? Where have you seen leadership sunshine yellow?
Reagan.
Yeah, yep,
Ronald Reagan, because we came out of, with Carter, we were like, we're gonna run out of energy, put sweaters on.
Right.
It's the end of this. Can't even get a good Iranian rescue group going, nothing.
yeah, yeah,
And Reagan came in of, America's not gone yet, we're here, we just go back to values, to go back to this, and
Yep.
here we are.
yeah.
And for better or worse, for parts of society, overall, it worked.
Yeah, yeah, the sunshine yellow. What about earth green? Public figures as earth green.
Menino in a way.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Menino.
Mayor Menino always wanting to bring people together. Yeah,
Both Annie and I worked on his new immigrant organization.
mm-hmm,
And that was very near and dear to his heart.
yeah,
Look at the protest Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street.
yeah,
What happened in New York, what happened here.
yeah,
Here it was done, they went to court, did their things, you have to leave, here's your time.
right,
Nobody came in and had what they had happen in New York.
right. Nobody got chased off, but
Right.
everything was explained. Yeah, more of a
Yeah.
democratic process. Yeah, I think of Nelson Mandela, no longer among us, but in terms of that values-based leadership, willing to stay in prison for 30 years for his belief that apartheid had to end in South Africa.
And afterwards, the idea that we're not going to go back and try to fix what happened. What
Right.
happened, we're moving forward, we
Mm.
need everybody together to make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. So, to Kim's point, as we look at us as a team, yeah, somebody needs to step forward and make sure we're making things happen, but I just don't want to leave the impression that leadership is only in one color.
So
All right.
if you did want a fiery red, you would take someone from that inner circle, is that right?
You know, someone needs to step up and take the hard charging move forward. It's up to the group who does that. Anyone can do it, right? It's just a matter of, okay, I'm not that comfortable with this arm on the top, but you know what? I can do it. So Kim can lead with fiery red if she needs to, right? I've seen you do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So just being aware that someone needs to take ownership for making the things happen, rather than just the fiery
It's
red.
interesting. I'm kind of just thinking about oftentimes corporations and leadership transitions within corporations. You'll hear, we need somebody to come in here. There's too much, too many expenses. We need somebody to come in and be the axe man. And we need somebody to come in and change the culture and soften things. You
Yeah,
kind of.
yep.
And I almost wonder. I mean, as I think about this, it's like it's and kind of tie this into it. It seems to line up. We need somebody that's a red that can come in here and make the drive us to where we need to go. We need the blue that can be kind of more cool, calm, and just make the decisions that need to be.
Yeah.
Or green that can bring everybody together. If the culture's not,
Yes.
too. I don't know. There's too much infighting or whatever. So
Yeah.
we need somebody that can bring everybody together. Anyway, it's just interesting as you kind of, you read the news and you hear about people being hired and what they bring to the table, and then kind of apply it to this. It kind of
Yes.
makes sense.
It does. In terms of behaviors, we need all of those kinds of behaviors. I want to give an important caveat here as we're using this language of color energies. It's who's leading with what behavior. Fiery red leadership may be required, and so you may look and say, wow, Maura is leading with fiery red. But you wouldn't say Maura is a red. We try not to just define me as my color. Oh, she's a red, therefore. No, Maura right now is leading with fiery red, and we appreciate it. Jonathan right now is leading with earth green, and that is helpful. We're in a democratic process. So try to use the phrase leading with that color energy, because we all have all four color energies. One of the things that I'll do with teams exactly like this, it looks like we're missing a color energy in the group. So we have everyone stand in their corners of their first choice color energy, then go to the corner of your second choice color energy, because that's just as comfortable. But generally, even when we look at this, there's more yellow and red in the conscious persona than is showed by the first choice color energy on this graph. So we do have that. But you can see that this would be a particularly introverted group. And we might want to draw heavily on our other colors. One of the things some of my client teams do is they'll buy a set of hats for each conference room. and as they're meeting, if they feel like a level of a certain other color energy is required, rather than, David, and I like your comment, you're seeing we need some hard charging red energy, but it's not like find the red and put that person in, but rather who's up for leading with some fiery red right now? Someone grabs the red hat and then takes that ownership. Right, so that's a little bit about that. I'm going to go, yes, go ahead, Jim.
I just wanted to ask you about the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting to me, a little surprising that we have a room full of people on the introvert side.
Yes.
And yet, we did choose to come
Yes.
here.
Right.
I would figure when it's a voluntary choice, the extroverts would be the ones who show up.
Mm.
Does that say something about what the chapter is doing for us, that we introverts find this a place that's comfortable? And maybe we don't go to some other functions where there are more extroverts?
Good question. Is there an introvert in the room who would be comfortable answering that question as to what did you come seeking today and why did you feel you were willing to come to an environment where you're going to do some networking and meet people you have not necessarily met before? Mary?
I'll say the networking, but I especially wanted to come today because I feel comfortable with you, and from the other times I've met you,
okay.
I feel like I can trust you not to call me out like you did not to.
Okay, so the feeling of a safe environment is important for our colleagues who lead with introversion. All right. What about, Jonathan, I apologize. I am calling you out. But I noticed that you have an introverted preference, we see that in your cards, and that you have not been to one of our meetings before, and yet you chose to come. Can you enlighten us?
I've been out of the loop of a lot of things being going overseas.
Okay.
And I would like to find a job.
Okay.
And there's no guarantees when you come to these things. You know,
Right.
you might meet some great people,
Yeah.
new friends, and walk away with no options.
Yeah.
But you might.
Yeah.
And so it's always worth the risk.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from that, I enjoy these meetings before when I was actually able to attend in San Diego.
Okay, yep.
And the love for learning new things
Ah,
overrides generally any
Okay.
station. So there's
yes,
no
very consistent with your cool blue there, right? That learning something new, picking up new information. Good. Yeah, thanks for your question, Jim, and for your answers, Mary and Jonathan. Appreciate that. So
My follow-on thought is,
Mhm.
if we want more extroverts to show up, what do we need to do differently?
good question. What would bring in the extroverts? What do we think? Extroverts? What would get more of our type here?
No, the announcement has to be sort of charging.
Yes. Mm-hmm. We do have rather low-key announcements. Mike?
I can't speak to the group itself, no.
Yeah.
Having a lot of history with it, but I can tell you from a color energy perspective, you're going to want to do team activities, things that everybody can include and have fun in. It's typically drive extroverts to attend those types of activities.
Good question. So a little bit more involvement, a little bit more action. Yeah.
Well, a side comment that has come to me many times is that when, it's an interesting dynamic when my wife and I work together.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've realized here is that there are times when she would like me to be more like she is.
Mm-hmm.
And I can feel, found at fault for not having the side that she has.
Yeah.
What I started doing over the last period of time, independent of this, is I can't be you.
Yeah.
You do, we lead this,
Mhm.
but here's what I do that lets you do what you do.
Yes.
And I can now, if she was here, if we hear this afterwards, I can say, that's red, dear, I'm over here right now.
Right. I'm leading with this other color right now. You're leading with red.
And
Yeah.
I do the blue, yellow, greens a
Yeah.
whole lot better than I do red.
Mm-hmm.
So why force me to do that when you're doing that?
Right. Not that you couldn't step up and do it if you needed to, but it's
Right.
covered. Yeah.
But not as naturally as she can,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So that's an interesting way to approach it as well.
Good.
Relationships are always important.
Yes. Especially when you're in married relationships. I'm going to zoom us through the last few slides, and I will let you know you may all have copies of these slides. This has been some really great discussion. We're coming close to the end of our time. Recognizing others, we've already talked about the idea of extroversion, introversion. We can see it, we know what it looks like. thinking, feeling. I've used this example before with a couple of you. I was doing a layoff and the thinking function says, wow, this is going to be easy. Last hired, first fired. Let's just get done. The feeling function says, wait a minute, we just hired 4 people from the Welfare to Work program and they're about to lose their jobs. This is terrible. What is the impact on them? Is there anything else we can do? Can we look at the seniority list? Is somebody ready to retire? Can we let them go first? The feeling function takes over, and that was actually a real life example for me, and we were able to have a couple of early retirements and retain 2 of our people who had come from a Welfare to Work program. So it plays out as you're trying to figure out where people come from. I'll click all of these in. And I don't usually do this fast. But fiery red, extroversion and thinking, sunshine yellow, extroversion feeling, cool blue, introversion thinking, earth green, extroversion, introversion and feeling. So as we're preparing to deliver information, let's think about doing it this way. Right? If we want the buy-in, how shall we do it? How shall we reach out to others once we've recognized where they come from? And what do we each need? And our time is such that I'm going to wrap up with this slide, and I'm happy to send you the rest of them, just keeping in mind where does the person come from and how might I want to change my behavior to do that. I have a handout for everyone, which is the color energies on the front and some adaptive changes you might want to make on the back. So if you would like to each take one and pass them around. We are at 1:28, so wrapping up, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.